So these are quite unprecedented times that we're living in. And sometimes, even when we think we've got everything handled, maybe things aren't as crazy as they seem outside. We are sometimes even feeling this global consciousness of anxiety, grief, depression, those sort of things, sadness, because our world's changing. And honestly, we also may just have feelings. It may not even, it just may be amplified. Our issues that we already deal with, feelings, emotions we already deal with, may even be amplified by what's going on in the outside world now and other times, especially now, of course. But there are things that we can do. And so there are strategies. And my guest today, Kristen Boice, we're going to talk about what things we can do to help deal with these feelings and emotions that arise right now or at any time, but especially right now during this pandemic. And Kristen is a psychotherapist and dear friend. She also went through my yoga teacher training, and she has a podcast of her own, which I'll link to in the show notes so you can dive deeper. And as my guest today, she has included for my Patreon members and patrons, I guess is what they're called, that you can get her 5-day close the chapter journal as a patron. So you can join and support the podcast for as little as $2 a month and get access to this journal. And I have lots of other exciting things and gifts from my guests coming up. We'll be releasing every 2 weeks right now, rather than once a week, just because I need to make sure that I am doing self-care because I am also dealing with a brick and mortar business being closed. So I just want to be realistic about what's going on, and trying to share this wisdom with you and help everyone through this crisis and see it from a higher perspective. If you're not in the Wild Wisdom Collective Facebook group, please join us in there. I've been starting to go live and talked about the life, death, rebirth cycle just a little bit ago. So please jump in, find us, Wild Wisdom Collective, and I hope you enjoy today's show. Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Finnick, and this is your space to learn more about the importance of slowing down, taking care of yourself, and the mind-body connection. And most importantly, how to reclaim your health by listening to your body's innate wisdom and reconnecting with the earth. Well, thanks, Kristen, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. It is so good to see you and be a part of your show. I can't wait.
Yes, I love reconnecting, and I know you're busier than ever, just like I am. And I appreciate you taking some time to share, because I think it's very relevant to talk about how to deal with anxiety and unknowns and the fears and everything that's coming up during this time of uncertainty. It's certainly unprecedented times.
Absolutely. And I think people don't know what to do or how to feel. And the shoulds are coming up, like I shouldn't feel this way or I should feel this way. So I'm seeing a lot of comparison right now too.
Yeah.
In what's going on, or, so their friend seems to be doing okay, but they're not. So there's a lot going on in terms of trying to cope, deal, and manage with the uncertainty and the anxiety right now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and, we were talking beforehand, how mental health and having the resources is, I'm so glad that people are still doing it telehealth wise, and online, because it can still be quite helpful. But having it and having access to it right now is more important than ever, because of, not everybody has the tools. And the first thing they might think about is going to a therapist and having some consulting time with a therapist just like you or your team. And they need that. And so what have you seen, like, has been helpful for people? Have you, during this time?
Yeah, there's quite a bit that I've seen in terms of patterns for people.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, connection.
Mm-hmm.
So connection with others. Right now, some people are living on their own. We've got single parents. We've got people that one person's going off to the office, one person's staying at home. Then we've got two working parents. We got grandparents to kind of helping out. We've got a whole gamut of situations that are going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing I'm seeing is stress.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have stress, a lot of times we'll see people regress.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing that I work with clients on, and I know you do too, is essential is the breath in
Mm-hmm.
order to handle the stress through the breath. And so it's the very first really piece that we work on in terms of coping. We hear a lot of news, and I'm telling people really reduce, eliminate a lot of the news intake because it'll affect our nervous system and kind of repress our immunity, our immune system. And so the first thing I teach is square breathing. There's all kinds of breathing, and that's we inhale through our nose, we hold for 4. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, and then exhale slowly out the mouth for 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so the breathing is really something that I encourage, and people are like, I forgot to breathe. I didn't make time to breathe. And if I could teach one strategy for mental health, and it's not a cure-all, end-all, it's one part of the recipe, so to speak, is through the breath. The breath is regulating, the breath is grounding, the breath is centering, and the breath helps us be able to handle all of the fear, anxiety, sadness and grief that we're kind of collectively experiencing, so it doesn't live in the body. And that's really an important piece that I'm seeing. The other piece that I'm seeing is kind of people are shutting down.
Yeah.
And they're moving away from, they don't feel motivated. They feel kind of like apathetic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're seeing that.
Go into that one. Let's focus on the breath, because I think that's really important to kind of even go deeper, especially yoga therapy kind of side. And it's that. So by actually focusing on the breath, they're opening up the lungs and making space, and that's where grief's held, and sadness too within the heart. And that whole spacious area. And so that's the things when you're reconnecting with that, and thus reconnecting with the body, it's a way to move those emotions too. So I think that's important to note. So I'm glad that you're sharing and telling people to reconnect there.
Yeah, because if we don't connect to the emotions, which lies through the breath and the centering, we can't release what's held in the body. We can't, like you said, move it up and out. And I think that's the one thing we're not taught is to connect and name the feeling. We are taught to shove it down, eat it, numb it, shop it, Botox it. I mean, we could go on and on. We're trying, look externally to fix it. We're not taught to connect to the emotion, to name the feeling. That's why I love the movie Inside Out from Disney. Because it's based on neuroscience and we're connecting to those core emotions. So I love how you said through the breath, we connect emotionally, and it helps us get present, not in the past, not in the future, bring it back to the here and now so we can connect emotionally. And that's the essence of having a secure sense of self, having a centered sense of self. If we can't connect to our feelings, what we're going to do is we're going to continue our habitual habits to move away from those feelings because we don't know how to feel and we don't know how to tolerate them.
Yeah. No, we've never been taught, and until you learn them through other, ways, going through some education or something. But a lot of times these aren't coping skills that we're taught, that are passed down from parents to child, etc., because they weren't taught, that sort of thing. And so we have to learn them. But just the simplicity of focusing on the breath, like you say, is so important because it does bring us back, like you mentioned, into the present moment, into the body, and connects, because a lot of people don't understand why they're feeling a lot of these feelings, especially grief. It might, sadness might make a little more sense, worry, that sort of things, but grief, is very present, and that's, people don't understand why. And well, there's lots of reasons why. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're seeing, why people are experiencing that?
Yeah, because we're obviously seeing some grief around losing a loved one and not being able to be present. And there's also called ambiguous loss. And so it's the loss of what was, it's the loss of the normalcy we once felt. Even though that wasn't certain, we feel like it was predictable. And so there is a lot of grief in that, because we just want to go back to what we know. We want to go back to the freedoms. We want to go back to the routine. We want to go back to how we know things were before, because it felt more secure, even though it really wasn't. So there's grief there. There's grief in, I think, this idea of not being able to see people. I mean, right now there's, parents, grandparents, friendships, their families. There has a lot of grief not being able to have that in-person human connection where we can give a hug. We can't, there's something to be said about, we know you and I are big advocates of touch, a healthy, appropriate touch. And without hugs, that really helps calm the nervous system. And so there's a lot of grief in that I'm seeing. And not having just that close proximity. There's something to be said about exchanging energy with somebody else. And there's not that we can do that certainly over FaceTime and Zoom and these video, which is wonderful. And we also feel the sadness and the grief of not being able to connect like we normally would. And I also think the uncertainty creates grief.
Oh, sure.
The uncertainty of, we don't know what tomorrow holds. Even though uncertainty was always there, it didn't seem so prevalent, so obvious. And I think there's a lot of grief in not being able to know, when is this going to end? How is this going to turn out? What's going to change as a result of, COVID-19? What is going to be different? And so there's grief there. So grief is definitely, I call it the collective grief. Even though you made a good point before we got on the call that people might not even know that they're feeling grief. I thought that was a really good point you made. Yeah. Feeling
grief and anxiety, because like I had mentioned prior to us pressing record, that a lot of people are waking up in the middle of the night, and different times maybe, but I always pinpoint in Ayurvedic medicine, or in Chinese medicine too, between the hours of 3 and 5 are related to the motion of anxiety. And a lot of times when people say, I woke up in the middle of the night, I'll ask them when. And a lot of times it's between 3 and 5. Not always. There's actually some patterns at other time frames as well. But it's sort of like, people who may not be attuned to those, or especially, why, and just think, I just can't sleep. I keep waking up. There's emotions hidden there, or even not being able to go to sleep, and having some insomnia things. And that's a lot of times worry and fear as well, related, mind's racing, thinking about everything, and you can't do anything. It's out of your control. And even the fact that you're letting go, you have to let go of control, when that might have been your coping mechanism in itself, is affecting a lot of people. I know that's been my coping mechanism for a long time, and I'm just like, can't do anything about it. But I've put in a lot of practices and education for me to get to that point where I just have to go with the flow because it's out of my control. But I just think about the people without those tools and how they may not even realize they're feeling all of this. But those are some indications, the waking up, not going to be able to sleep, especially if you were able to before, or if it's more pronounced. So.
Yes, I think those are important. I think appetite is also important. If we're not eating enough, or we're eating too much, that's an important piece to look at. If you're obviously we're in isolation, but if you're really just kind of pulling the plug from connecting to anybody. These are all things you want to pay attention to. We want to pay attention to body responses. And a lot of times we leave the body, we disconnect from the body. And that's why the breath we said was so important, is so we can get those messages that are invitations for us to look at what emotionally is going on. So emotions live in the body. So if someone has a body sensation, I'm often saying, what's the feeling there? And a lot of times they don't know. So I give them a cheat sheet. I'm like, okay, let's look at it. We've got anger, sadness, fear, disgust, joy, excitement. I give them the core emotions, and that helps them kind of start getting clear on what it might be.
Sure.
Because we can name the anxiety, and I'm like, okay, what's the anxiety look like for you? Well, sometimes they don't even know.
Oh, yeah. That is more common than people realize, because, we can talk about emotions all day long, but a lot of people don't know what that feels like, or where it is in their body, or there's such a dissociation in many, many people. And it may not even be related to always trauma. It may just be that they just, for whatever reason, has never connected. So
exactly.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's go back to the second thing you said you were seeing was the shutting down, which you just kind of started talking about again. You want to explain more of that apathy and that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's what we call defense mechanisms, and we all have different forms of defense mechanisms that have been conditioned, that have been programmed, that have been ways we've survived, ways we've gotten through hard things. And we want, especially in times now, I'm seeing a lot of those defense mechanisms, and shut down withdrawal is one of them. So if I just pull the plug on how I'm feeling, and if I just kind of numb out and disconnect, then I don't have to feel the anxiety, the sadness, the grief, the loneliness, whatever we're feeling. It's a defense mechanism. And what I have to go, okay, and another defense mechanism might be that I get angry and I'm blaming everything and everyone, and I'm just mad. I'm just irritable. I'm annoyed. I'm agitated. That's another one. That's a signal to say, okay, what's going on underneath? What are you feeling? Because we don't really like sometimes to feel the feelings, or a lot of people get afraid that they're going to open the floodgates and not be able, it's like turning off the faucet and they're not going to be able to turn it off. And I would say you can regulate it through the breath. You can pace it through the breath. The breath is the regulator, so to speak. It's like if you're going scuba diving, I'm like, that's how you regulate underwater. That's how you regulate through those emotions that we're so afraid to feel. But we have to recognize our defense mechanisms. Workaholism, being a workaholic, that's a way to move away. Perfectionism, gossip, love addiction. I mean, we could go to all the poo-poo platter of addictions here and go down that train, but these are all ways we've learned to move away from what lies within, because we didn't know how. We didn't, and it wasn't safe sometimes to have our feelings as kids. So this is the time where I'm seeing it's really through the breath. We can learn that you can tolerate it. We can build up that tolerance to actually be able to connect and move through those feelings. And then notice when we are in the defense response. So if I find myself in the pantry going, okay, what cookies in here, which we all can do at times. And I'm going, okay, what am I feeling? Okay, I'm really sad right now. But I have to connect with that. I have to recognize I'm in the pantry looking for a cookie, which is a defense, which is me moving away. I have to feel my feet on the ground, take a breath. Because really I want the cookie. Because I think I feel better if I get the cookie. I mean, who doesn't want a cookie?
Of course.
At the end of it, then I feel shame or guilt or anxious. And so it actually creates a cycle of self-sabotage.
Yes. Well, and two things from there, from your points, is that not only seeing people go to their defense mechanisms, but also, and I mentioned this before the call, some of their coping mechanisms are gone. Like I mentioned a friend who can't go to the gym, can't play hockey, like has no way to process all of this anxiety and agitation. And, he can bike, but, the that when you're trying to burn off all of it and you can't because you can't go anywhere. And luckily it's here in Indianapolis, it's been sunny and a little warm most days, not every day, but his anxiety is through the roof because he's used to being able to like burn any aggression or anxiety off and like power through it, and he can't do anything. And so sometimes our coping skills are gone, and we're having to deal with feelings we've always pushed down or pushed away. And any suggestions for that besides, because I actually, I guess, did bring up the second was the feet in the grass and feeling what am I really feeling? But what about for those people who aren't used to feeling and don't have their coping mechanism or defense mechanisms either? And, I would totally say, yes, feet in the grass for sure, or even on the ground anyway. Well, what do you suggest to a lot of your clients and just in general to people like that?
Yeah, and I do see a theme of this.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely do see a theme of my people that go to the gym, or they're used to going to their workout classes, or they're used to doing their particular sport.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's been taken away, like you said. And so they're feeling so kind of anxious in their body, and there's no release for that. Yeah. So first of all, acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. So the fact that your friend was acknowledging it, or like, I can't do these things, I'm like, good for you. That's absolutely true, because we have taken away some of your coping mechanisms. We have removed some of your release things too. So acknowledgement's huge for yourself and for other people. And two is, okay, how can I release these emotions? But we have to connect to the emotions. And in particular, women, but a lot of men are conditioned out of their feelings. Mm-hmm. They're programmed out of them. They've got to be the provider, the protector. Mm-hmm. They've got to have it all together, the fixer. And so I've kind of done a disservice to them, because then they don't have the permission to connect to those feelings. So the second thing is connect to the feelings. And then the third thing is, what would help you move the emotions? So is it going to be, when we have to recognize it, is it going to be an online class, for those really physical outlet folks? And most people need some physical outlet. We know movement helps move through that regression to now progression. Yeah. So if we feel like we're regressing and people are like, I thought I worked through all this, I'm like, take a deep breath. You're okay. You're enough. And so some people need more of that physical outlet. So we're going to be brainstorming on what could you do physically. Yes. So let's come up with some ideas. Can you do a workout class in the house? I know it's not the same. Can you create a makeshift gym in your house? So can you get your weights, your jump rope, your, pull up chin bar, whatever you call them. Can we come up with creating yourself an in-home gym, even if it's in a closet? What can you do up and down the stairs? I've been having my clients go, okay, I need you to go up and down the stairs. Well, they don't have stairs. Okay, I need you to go around your house. If they can't feel like some people aren't in areas where they can actually get into some green space. Sure. So taking the dog for a walk, going for a run. So we brainstorm, and I have them write out some ideas. It's not going to be the exact same. So there's grief. So there's the grief over missing the hockey, missing the outlet. There's grief in that. So I try to acknowledge it. And people are like, I'm fine. I'm like, it's okay to have your feelings. They feel uncomfortable because now we're hitting feelings, but acknowledging the grief and not being able to do what you did before. Because it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, definitely. I joked, I said, why don't you do Pilates? Pilates can be really hard because he mentioned, he can't lift weights. And I said, well, use your body as weight. And he's like, oh, Pilates. I said, I'm sure there's Pilates for men online. Oh, there is, probably on YouTube. Absolutely. The manly, sporty dudes who do Pilates or something. But like that'll keep everything kind of in shape, and then you can go outside and bike or whatnot to get that more aerobic sort of stuff going on. But talking about feelings, when those being aware of the feelings, acknowledging the feelings, and being okay with feeling. And
there's a lot of different feelings, which we've talked about, a lot of them that are coming up, and they may be different than what we expect to come up. So do you want to share more on that and just being okay with it and allowing, giving space for the feeling?
Yes, because here's the thing I'm seeing. I shouldn't or should. We should all over ourselves. We've all heard that saying. And I'd
Uh-huh.
like to change the should to a could, but they think they should be feeling a certain way. I'm like, there is no manual that says right now you need to be feeling joyful. It's not real. It's not true. And
Mhm.
so when you can give yourself permission to say, it's okay, I'm having my feelings. And if so and so isn't having the same feelings, that's okay too, because they have a different experience right now. And
Mhm.
maybe they're not connected to their feelings.
Mhm.
Maybe they don't even know what they're feeling. So when we get into that comparison, it shuts our feelings down
Sure.
and we go into shame. And shame says there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure, whatever the
Mhm.
negative not enoughness is. And
Sure.
so really, I think the key here is self-compassion.
Mhm.
Self-compassion is the key to the antidote to the shame that might come up. And then it allows you to be able to sit with the feeling. So
Mhm.
and most people don't know how to do this because it wasn't done to them. They weren't nurtured.
Mhm.
Their parents didn't, and the parents didn't know. So I'm not picking
Yeah.
on the parents, but
Yeah.
say, it's okay, honey, to have your feelings. Let it out. It
Mhm.
makes sense that you're feeling this way.
Mhm.
Those are really affirming words. And so that's how I talk to myself. I know it sounds silly, but I talk to myself and say, it's okay. And it's not easy. So it's not like, oh, then I'm like, kumbaya. No, it's a struggle, right? Because we
Uh-huh.
want to feel better. We
Yeah.
don't want to feel like this. And so we
Yeah.
want the feelings to go away. And when
Yeah.
I can say, no, this is something's trying to tell me something. There's something for me to process here. There's
Mhm.
something for me to tend to, and it's okay. I
Mhm.
literally have to talk myself through it because
Mhm.
no one else is going to do it for me.
Yeah.
This is what I've learned because I'm like, can you make me feel, can you nurture me? And they're like, I don't know how either. I didn't get it. And so if I can do it for myself,
Yeah.
that calms the nervous system down and allows the feelings to be released instead of trapped and stuffed down in the body.
Mhm. Well, I
Very
love
hard
that
to
you
practice.
shared that. Yeah, well, because it is important. I have to do the same thing, and sometimes I'll have to talk to myself too, and I always laugh and joke to myself. What is Stuart Smiley, the SNL, thing of because you're good enough, you're
Yes.
smart enough, and by golly, people like you. But it is a little bit like that, but it for me, I know it's because we were talking offline just about like how crazy busy we both are, and and other people are cleaning their houses, and I'm like, I want to be cleaning my house, but and like I said, maybe it's because we're small business owners. I mean, we're busier than ever, and I don't want to be this busy, but it is what it is, and I crash on the weekends, like. And I feel guilty sometimes when I do that because I feel like my house should be cleaned. I should be out exercising. And I usually try to find time for self-care. There are days I don't. But and I'll feel some guilt because I'm like, I should be, the shoulding starts to happen. And I have to just go, it's okay. So Saturday, and I'll admit this to everybody, I was exhausted from working because sometimes it's 10, 12-hour days because I'm also taking care of a 7-month-old baby. And I'm like, this is not what I signed up for, but it is what it is for what right now. It'll settle out at a certain point. But for a while, things were, pretty settled. It was busy because I had a baby. I mean, that's a given. But then got crazy with having no staff and having to take care of business and everything else I do, and so I just crashed. On Saturday I watched House of Flowers season 3 on Netflix, which is like this Mexican drama. I have it in English, but it's so ridiculous. But I just sat with my baby was taken care of, and we'd nap on the couch, and I'm like, we ended up walking, but it was all I could do to pull myself out to go walk 3 miles because I was literally exhausted, and I had to just be okay with that, and that is hard for me.
It is hard. I
Mhm.
think it's really hard because like you said, we feel guilty.
Mhm.
And what I noticed, I wrote on I have a little postcard, my little Post-it note in my
Mhm.
journal, and it says expectations. And
Yeah.
I wrote, on another sheet. I can't find it, but it says realistic or unrealistic.
Ah, I love that.
What are my expectations right now? I'm having to recalibrate all my expectations. So I walk downstairs, and for some reason we've decided to use like 15 cups a day, and I have to go, okay, what are my
like the whole
everybody's
household.
using like multiple cups, like for some reason. I'm like, what's happening? Why are we, and I'm finding out this is a theme in other homes. Like, why are we using 15 cups? Yeah. And I can feel myself going trigger, trigger, trigger. And I have to take my breath before anything comes out of my mouth. Like, why are we having 15 cups? I've told you 25 times not to put the, I had before anything comes out of my mouth. And then I have to look at my expectations. We're in quarantine. We're in quarantine. Is this really something that I have to decide, do I want to pursue this? Or can I calmly have a conversation about it? What are my expectations of my house being clean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have it in me right now. And I have to go, it's okay. It's okay. I can live with it. So I'm having to talk myself through my expectations because expectations can be resentments waiting to happen.
Sure. Oh, definitely.
We can get into martyrdom. I can do it for the best of us. Yes. So I have to watch my expectations because if I don't, they're going to be projected and put onto other people.
Yep.
Or other situations, or you name it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we started talking about that. I'm glad I shared, because we all feel different ways at different times, and we're human. Like, just because we have some coping tools that are healthier, like, doesn't always mean that we don't feel, like we're real. It's real life. Things go up and down, things ebb and flow, and we get exhausted because, I just like, when is this gonna stop? And but luckily, I was like, I'm not doing anything this weekend, and I said I'm not working. I need the time, but also that meant that I just pretty much laid on my couch. Sunday I felt better, and I cooked and I'm making the dog food now. Not that I'm trying to add one more thing to my plate, but I'm trying to not have her have allergies, and so. So I cooked. I made some things for me. I made some things for the dog, for the baby, that sort of stuff, which that can be exhausting too. But I had more energy because on Saturday I just was like, I'm not doing anything.
You set a boundary for yourself. You worked yourself through it. You gave yourself permission to rest, because if we don't, and we are human beings right now. And if we try to pretend like we out of it all together, I think that is such a disservice to what's going on. I really do. So if someone's like, and you just do this and you just do that, and then I'm like, that's not realistic. No. It's okay for you to have grief bursts. 1 minute you're fine, the next minute you're not. That's what I'm finding. They're called grief bursts. And 1 minute you're okay, the next minute you're not. And you go, oh, there's the grief burst. That's it. Okay. Oh, I'm going to need to recharge my battery. It's like I need to write a permission slip for myself to go, oh, rest day. Yeah. And then the thoughts are going to come like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be cleaning. I should be cooking. I mean, they come and you kind of watch the thoughts, because and this is what we call mindfulness, and it's not easy to do. So I'm painting a picture, like just watch the thoughts and then they float by. But you watch the thoughts and you go, oh, there's the shame. There's the guilt. Name it. I am big into naming the feeling. I'm big into naming what's going on, because when there's shame, there's a story. So here's my other Post-it note. Shame. You can see I've been living by Post-it notes. Yes. Shame. There's a story, and the stories are often not true. So the shame might say, you're really, you're not being productive. I mean, you shouldn't be doing this. This is not what I'm making this up, like a good mom does, or whatever I've got. And then I'm stuffing all that down, and that shame, then I'm in the pantry, then I'm doing this, I'm moving away. Okay. And when we can call it what it is, because with shame comes stories, I can go, oh, there's the story that I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not productive enough, or whatever that and not enough is. Then this is where the self-compassion comes into play. That's the hard part. So then I go, okay, all right, honey, you're feeling overwhelmed. You're exhausted. Take a deep breath. I get it. It's okay to watch a show.
Yeah. Well, that's important, because I like it. I don't mind sharing my examples because I hope that other women out there can relate, because I have always been a top overachiever, top nurturer kind of person. That's how I was trained to be, and that's who I am. Or, obviously worked away from that. But I'll get those thoughts of I'm not doing enough. And like we chatted about before we started recording, just like I was like, I just have to let it go. This is one thing I'm going to concentrate on. It's okay that I'm not doing this, this, and this. My priority is my daughter now, so that helps. But it's just like, but it's interesting when you have those mindsets, and how it's like, if I'm not doing, who am I? That sort of thing. And it's like, I'm okay with this. Like, I'm ready to be by the ocean and going at a slower pace. I really am. But it took me a long time to get there. And if that happened, I mean, even more than a vacation maybe, but if that happened, it'd probably be hard to deal with at first, because even though you've slowed down, like, there's these kind of a spectrum. But it's interesting how that still sometimes sticks with you. The doing, or I'm not doing enough and so I've had to recently, because I'm also an ideas person, and I constantly have ideas, and I'm like, I do not have the capacity to put that idea in motion right now. Let's just put it on the side, and I have to be okay with it. And that is one hard thing for me. Yeah.
I love that you're sharing that, and the insight and the self-awareness you have around it, because that's the beauty of doing work and being self-aware and doing the breathing and yoga and all that, because it helps you get clear on and notice these things, because this is the truth. We have an inner critic. We have an inner critic. We have a hustler. We have a role we've played in our family system. We have all these roles and parts of us.
Yeah.
And when the parts start to get conflicted, like the one part's like, you just need a rest. You got to take care of yourself. You're crumbling. You got to go to bed. Sometimes I go, you got to go to bed. Like, I have to put myself to bed. I'm not fit for consumption. Like, put her to bed. And so and then there's this other part that says, yeah, but you didn't get all your to-do list done. You didn't get the laundry done. What about the dishes in the sink? Well, you didn't unload the dishwasher. I mean, seriously, these are the parts, right?
Yeah.
Or you didn't accomplish this thing. And we're in such a doing society that bam, here comes the virus. Wow. Now we're really having to do some, if we're present, do some deeper work, even in the midst of the busy.
Yep.
To notice these different parts that are telling us different things. I'm noticing, like, oh, look at the neighbor's lawn. It looks so perfect. We have 0 flowers out there. And I'm going, it's okay. They love flowers, and that's great. You're okay. It's okay you don't have the flowers. It's okay you haven't gone out there and trimmed the bushes. It's okay. It's all right. Like you did. Talking first, I have to be aware of doing it, right? I have to be aware of that shame voice that comes up, that productivity voice, that hustler in me that says your worth and value comes from what you get done, what you're doing, how you're shown. I mean, all these messages we've gotten to get worth and value, importance, or significance. I'm going, no, I'm enough just the way I am. You're focusing on your daughter. I'm focusing on my kids. Okay. And we're trying to work, and we're trying to do the laundry and the dinners and the 3 meals a day. And the snacks and the diaper changes and I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. And that's all you can do.
And I breathe. If you come in my house, you will see me nonstop breathing, nonstop. It's the way I cope. And I've had to train myself to do that, because that was not natural. I was a breath holder. I wasn't even noticing my breath.
Sure.
Forget about even noticing I was a breath holder. So that was the thing. I decided I'm going to pick one thing, and that was the one thing for a while that I worked on, and to retrain my brain to go breathe instead of react, breathe instead of get dysregulated, breathe.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And clients still tell me, I forgot to breathe. And I'm like, I mean, it's hard. It's not an automatic deep breathe. Now I'm saying we're all breathing to stay alive. We're not doing the deep breath to get present, to connect emotionally.
Yeah, definitely. What are you doing on a daily basis to help connect and be still, because it is that coming to stillness, and whether it's to pay attention to your feelings, just to have a moment of silence, but being still and coming into some type of quiet is the way that you can start to connect. What are you doing personally, well, on a daily or almost daily, where are you trying to do besides breathe? Of course, you just mentioned that.
My number one is breath, for sure. And if you see, I'm going to show you my journal. I have a journal. It says, I am enough. I'm holding up my journal. I carry this with me, and I know you can see I've got like tons of stuff in here, and I will write it out to get it out. I will name it. And so if I have feelings about someone or something, I'm writing them a letter. I know this sounds, but it's like, if I'm looping on something and someone said something, or I've said something, or something just really sticking, I'm stuck in it. So in order to move it, I write it out to get it out. So I'm doing a lot of, and I don't spend like hours, like, let me journal for 5 hours. Nobody has time for that. So people could, I'm not saying there's retreats for that, but I'm saying in the moment while we're working and balancing the kids in the home, take 5 minutes. 5 minutes. If a client can give me 5 minutes and I have to walk the walk, write out just even gratitude. We know gratitude practice is really important. I mean, that's been around for decades now. And what I do is I get still and I notice the voice that comes up, and that's the voice that's trying to tell me, you got anxiety, you're in shame. And then I write down the shame story. So the story I'm making up is I'm not doing enough. I'm not a good enough parent. I'm failing at taking care of the house. I'm making this up, but you get the idea. And I write it out. And then on the other side of the page, I write out compassionate words like, you're enough. Even if I don't believe in the moment, because we have to be our own nurturing parent. We want someone else right now to take care of us. It's a universal theme I'm seeing. We want someone to take care of us. We're tired. We're like, we're doing everything. Can somebody meet my needs? Can somebody take care of me? And nobody's going to do it. So this is the grief again. This is the grief again, that no one's going to do that for me. So I'm working on reparenting myself and nurturing myself. So I know it sounds hokey pokey, but on the other side, I write out, you're doing the best you can.
I think that's great.
And so that's another thing I do pretty much every day. It just depends. I write out, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 3 minutes. And then outside, I love, like you and I love being outside. So we live on water. So I will go out there, even if it's cold, and get a blanket and a coat. And I just go out there and I listen to the birds. I watch the birds. It's so calming to my nervous system. So I love that. I spend a lot of time with my dogs. That helps me a ton. Petting my dogs, connecting with my pets, going for a walk, walking the dog. So those are the things that have really helped me. And then talking to people that I'm close to about what I'm feeling.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's
And it might be one person that you tell, it's not people think I don't have a lot of friends. I'm like, you need maybe one. If we're lucky, we get one person that we can be vulnerable with, really truly tell the truth to. And that's important right now.
It is, definitely. I completely agree. But all the things, you were sharing, and especially the journals, it's all accessible and things that people can do right now. I've been doing, because when all this started happening, I got thrown off. I was just rebuilding, trying to get things after having a baby, like trying to get back into sync and routine, and then it kind of all got changed. And it happens all the time, like you're in a routine and something changes. So I've been actually doing qigong in the morning, because and not every day, because there's just some days where there's just too much going on, but almost every day. I would say 5 out of 7. Usually I would do some yoga and meditation, but I was just not in the mood for whatever reason. And I want to do some Iyengar yoga classes at night, but by 6 o'clock I'm spent. But I was like, what can I do, right? And I took a qigong course when I was pregnant a year ago. And I was like, that sounds good. It's a standing practice. It's very simple. And it's actually designed to move the energy. And that's what I needed, because having been pregnant and while I've been walking, I've done some yoga, it just felt stagnant. Plus, of course, like it helps move. When you move the energy, you also move the emotions. And it's springtime, so it's very important to get everything moving. And so it's 25-minute practice. And my daughter will just sit in her pack and play. And it's just like mindfulness. For one, it is a mindful practice, even though it's guided. This form of Qigong especially is very simple, but it's not always easy, just like mindfulness practices. Not for the mindfulness part. I mean, there's that too, because it's not like trying to rush through movements or anything, but it's also this exercises because they're repetitive and they're designed to move energy, they can feel like a lot of work, even though they look like very simple exercises. And so that's been mine. And then I do at night before I go to bed, I do gratitude big practices and then like prayers and stuff like that too. But I always do gratitude first. And so in some days there's a plethora, and some days it's just my health and my daughter, my dog, that sort of stuff. But I think that is very important. And yeah, the writing down, words have so much power. That's what, even if it seems hokey, like to, say that to yourself or write that to yourself, you're doing the best you can. Even saying that in the mirror or whatnot, words have so much power, and there's a vibration to words. And so if we're saying, I had a friend reach out to me because I shared Qigong with him because he was having some issues, and I said, well, you haven't been doing anything. Some therapeutic yoga, some simple yoga would be good. Here's when some classes are, here's, YouTube of some therapeutic yoga. But I knew Qigong would help move the energy because I knew it was stagnant energy. Not that yoga doesn't. Obviously, yoga moves energy too. But also he's male, so I thought Qigong with a male teacher might be more accessible for him. But he said something when we were talking, and it was very negative, like about himself. And I said, well, first of all, you have to reframe that, because when you say that, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but it stuck with me. And I said, because when you say that, your body's listening, you're listening. So, you have to reframe it, even if it sounds hokey. And it just starts with that simple, oh gosh, I just caught myself, degrading myself in some way. And, how can I say it in a more, you're doing the best you can, that shifting those limiting beliefs sort of things. And and I just mentioned that to him, and I saw something on Instagram and sent it to him, just to remind, like, we hear ourselves, and we need to nurture ourselves, and we're not taught, so we don't know how to do that. We kind of joke, laugh it off that we this or that, but we really need to nurture ourselves and talk to ourselves like we want to be talked to. And so I'm glad that you shared that. And is there anything else you want to share about what's going on and what might be helpful for people to find some self-compassion or just, deal with what's going on? And obviously we're going to send people to your resources of your 5-day journal and that too. We'll have a post on Patreon about that.
And that helps people walk through what we talked about today. It's kind of a five days of practicing this. Mm-hmm. So then it can retrain your brain. It can help calm the nervous system. You can connect more emotionally and be present. You can work through the past to live in the present, mm-hmm. or not jump to the future. So I think the main piece about self-compassion is noticing when you do, like you said, when you're talking to yourself in a way that you wouldn't talk to your friend, you mm-hmm. wouldn't talk to your kid, you wouldn't talk to the person you love the most. And we're the worst to ourselves. We are our worst critics. Mm-hmm. And I find it keeps us stuck. It disempowers us, and we feel hopeless, helpless, and lost. And so if we can work on talking to ourselves sweetly, and these are the things I say, and I know it's going to sound cheesy, but if you've seen the movie The Help, this became, I've done this for so long. And when The Help came along, I was like, yes, if you've seen that movie. There's a scene where she's the nanny or the housekeeper and talks to the little girl. But this is what I've told my kids from the very beginning. I said, you matter, you're important, you're loved, and you're enough. And I say it sincerely. It's not like you're matter, you're loved, and you're enough, because then it doesn't land. And I say it with loving eyes. So when we look at someone, or if we look at ourselves in the mirror, or if we look at someone else, whether it's our child or someone we love, and we look at them with loving eyes, it's a soft face. We're not clenched jaw. It's a very soft, tender face. Our nervous systems can relax and take a breath and feel safe. I want to read this quote that I thought you would really like. That spoke to me so much. It's from Peter Levine, who's done a lot of somatic work, which is body work in the therapeutic world. And this quote just spoke to me. And it says, trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside and the absence of an empathic witness. So trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathic witness. And so my whole goal is to, one, lead with empathy and compassion and listen to understand. And I can only do that if I'm connected emotionally, if I'm present, and if I'm working on talking to myself through that shame, because shame doesn't just disappear. We're going to have that for the rest of our lives. It's how do we handle it when we have those shoulds come up, when we have that negative self-talk, when we don't feel good enough. And when we can have empathy for ourselves and go, okay, honey, and I use the word honey and sweetie. I know I'm in my car and I'm like, sweetie, take a deep breath. Even though I feel like they cut me off, I'm like, you're okay, you're safe. I'm trying to talk to myself so I can then have my prefrontal cortex online to give me rational thoughts. So I'm not in a survival state, a fight, flight, or freeze. And empathy is, if we can do that for ourselves, we can do that for others, and that changes relationships. That helps us feel like we belong and we're connected. One, to ourselves first, we're not abandoning ourselves, and two, we can offer that to other people.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your insight and your beautiful knowledge, and keep taking care of yourself, and I will too, and take care of your beautiful family, and we'll all get through this. Definitely. Everyone
We
will.
absolutely will. I'm so grateful for the time. Thank you so much, Alyssa. And thank you for all the work you're doing in the world. It does make a difference. You are making an impact. And I love seeing pictures of your beautiful daughter. So keep those coming, because it brings smiles. It helps the nervous system when we see those smiley faces in dog photos.
Oh, wonderful. I definitely will. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I want to hear from you. What did you think of today's topic? Direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, or better yet, join the Wild Wisdom Collective, my free Facebook group, and chime in on the discussion. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insight. And if you love what you're hearing, please take a moment to click the button on your smartphone to subscribe. Or, better yet, write a review and tell me why you love tuning in. And maybe you'll be featured in our listener spotlight on a future episode. I cannot wait to see you again, same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.